So here's something completely and utterly different that will make you think I have absolutely lost it. But I believe an experience that I had with sleep paralysis a few years ago has given me an insight as to how some people can so absolutely believe they've been abducted by aliens that they're willing to go on national TV, risk becoming a figure of fun to the local people they know, and of course, knowingly inviting national ridicule with that. So I just want to make it very clear at this point, I don't believe I've been taken by aliens and replaced by a robot or anything like that. But I did have a couple of instances of sleep paralysis, which has totally blown my mind in many respects. So a few years ago, I decided that I didn't want to live on a canal boat anymore. So in early 2020, I moved to dry land from my tiny little boat that was surrounded by endless nature and these amazing rural environments to a much bigger place on dry land. But of course, I didn't own any furniture because I'd just moved from a boat. So I was living in this really basic, bare, empty environment. Of course, within a few weeks, the first national lockdown then occurred. So I was living in this incredibly bare environment with nobody coming or going and nothing really happening in the wider world outside the door either. And of course, that was a stark contrast to living on a boat only a few weeks prior to that, surrounded by endless stimulation and all of these wonderful outdoors and rural environments. So, with no expertise or anything whatsoever, I've always put down what happened next to that stark contrast and maybe the extreme boredom that I was suddenly feeling and maybe some sort of underlying stress and concern about everything going on. So a few weeks into lockdown number 1, I woke up in the small hours and I can't stress how real this felt to me at the time, but somebody was holding me down and maybe a second person was scratching my back. Now, I'm not talking about scratching my back in a good way of a satisfying scratching an itch. I'm talking a very, very aggressive, painful scratch. And I couldn't wriggle free, I just could not get out. And of course, at the time, I was experiencing it as some sort of waking nightmare, sort of very, very real experience. But it was sleep paralysis. And at some point, I managed to shake it all off and wake up fully, and then I could move again and everything was fine. Or was it? Because even though I knew that what I thought had just happened could not possibly have happened, and I could reach round and feel my back and feel that it was okay, I still found myself lying awake in bed and getting so worked up and so convinced in my own mind that it was actually real after all, that I had to go and look in the bathroom mirror to check that there were no scratch marks on my back. And of course, I then sort of can chuckle to myself and think, what on earth am I doing trying to convince myself that something I know didn't happen? Anyway, that's it. You think, phew, that was scary, that was a horrible experience, and off you go about your daily life. But this is what happened then that I think is weirder in some respects, because that experience had so locked itself in somewhere in the back of my mind as being a real thing, and that I was now walking around with a scratched up back, that I would find myself just in my daily life, and this happened on more than one occasion. I might be, say, hoovering the carpet, and then as I lean over, I feel my shirt pull against my back, and in my mind, instantly, I'm like, oh, I've got to watch out because I've got me scratched back. And I'd lean up and I'd be, what am I talking? Of course I haven't got a scratched back. And I can actually remember walking up the local hill on the outskirts of town, back on our one daily allotted walk that we were allowed in that era. And I was actually walking along for a few steps at one point with my hands behind my back, pushing my backpack away from the flat of my back. Because, of course, somewhere in the back of my mind, in autopilot, I just absent-mindedly started to try and keep the bag away from all these scratches. And then once again, of course, snapped out of it and go, what on earth? And it was in this area that something twigged in my memory, and I connected those experiences of just how extremely real the sleep paralysis had seemed, even though I 100% knew it was completely unreal and never happened. And yet there I was in day-to-day life, every now and then finding myself naturally acting on that sleep paralysis experience. there was just this moment where that married up to the memories of being a kid, watching documentaries about alien abductees and stuff like that. And the skeptics on there would say, well, it's clearly just sleep paralysis and people don't realise how realistic it can be and all the rest of it. And it just all came flooding back to me, and I suddenly realised how absolutely obvious it was, having experienced sleep paralysis myself, that these people would believe. Because even though I like to think that I was an intelligent character, I couldn't shake it from the back of my mind. And that was a nothing experience that wasn't in any way dramatic or traumatic, ultimately. The only other notable sleep paralysis experience that I've ever had happened prior to that, and in some respects is even stranger, even though it didn't have the long-term effects. So I was sleeping at my nan and granddad's house, and classic sleep paralysis, I woke up, somebody was holding me in place and I couldn't move. But then I woke up again after shouting my nan and granddad, who then came into the room. And so that was all completely real. And then the terrifying moment was when I then actually woke up and realised that even in the sleep paralysis experience, me thinking that I'd got free and woken up and my nan and granddad had come into the room hadn't happened. That was all purely imaginary in my mind. And as I say, it's the strength of the utterly real feeling of these incidents that then gives me that realisation of how these abductee people can feel so confident and utterly 100% believe in their experience that they're willing to invite this national ridicule from going on television, claiming to have all sorts of stuff done to them in all sorts of unusual planetary places, we'll say. And yeah, I really just wanted to share that, as it's just a completely random thing that's been on my mind recently. So anyway, yes, that's just a completely random little story for you, my friends. Sorry for wasting your time with this absolute nonsense. I think between not sleeping properly and then having this cold, I've been risking getting another one of those boredom-induced sleep paralysis moments coming in. So I just wanted to do a little bit of filming to the camera, and, well, normal videos will resume in the coming days, hopefully. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm not going to waste any more of your time. I'm just going to say links in the description. You'll find all my normal videos from the great outdoors on the YouTube channel, on my Facebook page and all the rest of it. But yeah, sorry for wasting your time with this. Have a fantastic day. Keep it interesting, keep it boat worthy, and of course, my friends, farewell.